Hey everybody, welcome. Hopefully you had a good day off, holiday. Um, you weren't affected by any of the chaos or whatever was going on. Because that help with trauma therapy and whatnot. So I am finishing up here with groups presentations myself. I know you guys will be doing your own presentations soon and filming them and just kind of like making sure that they're on the um, ability and level that you'll be able to lead a group when you're in your either first social work job or even your practicum. A lot of times they like to add practicum students to it to lead a group. So you find that to be the case very often. And I am going to get you how you would evaluate that group. We'll see how it's going and how we do things and if it was successful, if what you did was a good group, and if not, ways to make it better. If so, what are we doing that makes things right to show that we're doing what we said we were going to do? And that's definitely a big deal. So let us start with that. The PowerPoint on evaluation, I kind of started it last week, but we'll go all the way through it and then I'll talk about it for you if it wants to work.
Class, welcome to our lecture on evaluation as part of our group skills in substance abuse counseling course. In addition to an exploration of evaluation and group work, this lecture will also include specific descriptions of how the week's materials fit into your group project. As you know, your group project will describe intervention, and the proposal will describe the specific population you have selected, as well as the type and the purpose of the group. Further, your group will outline the screening criteria for members, as well as group size, goals, an exploration of legal, ethical, and cultural considerations for your group, and termination criteria and outcome measures. The final portion of your group project will be a member progress update created for a fictional member of the group that you've created. In this progress update, you will describe and summarize a fictional client's behavior within your group based on any information you choose to include. You must describe the client's prior treatment plan. This progress report should be written from the perspective of the group leader following the 6th session of the group. Be sure to include initial goals and any modifications based on your report. Please refer to the assignment rating rubric for more information and be sure to use the document as your primary source as your group puts together the group project. Keep in mind that I'm happy to read and provide feedback on drafts that I receive on or before the date outlined in your syllabus. As we look at the objectives for the week, I want to remind you to review the chapter for the week prior to viewing the lecture, as it's intended to supplement your reading. By the end of this week, you should be able to identify the benefits, evaluation, and steps for incorporating evaluation into the group experience, and identify and describe the necessary components in the development of a treatment update for a group member. So at this point, you should have a pretty good idea of the life of a group, beginning at the point where leaders come up with an idea and design and plan a group, as well as an understanding of the different stages that groups go through and the issues related to leadership and group dynamics, and even a bit about terminating group. Today, we're going to talk about the big question of how we know the group has worked. Pretty much regardless of your setting, you'll need to have evidence for the effectiveness of what it is you're doing. In the group context, we must show that the group makes some difference in the lives of our clients or adds value to the service we provide at that site. We could think of a college orientation process as a task group that provides new students with the information they need to thrive in their new environment. But how would we know if that orientation group was successful? Naturally, we would want to know the extent to which the program was effective in delivering the intended outcomes, and there are a couple of ways that we can go about evaluating those efforts. So first, what's evaluation? Evaluation is an ongoing process that benefits both the group members and the group leaders and can track the progress of individual members and the groups as a whole. Evaluation can be understood as assigning a value or worth to something. And in many cases, we can think about using an evaluation to decide whether or not a group is worth the time and the resources that we invest in it. Evaluation provides information that can be used to improve group leadership or the overall group experience moving forward. It gives us an opportunity to measure and communicate what we're doing and how it's working. And it also gives us information on those areas that need improvement. Evaluation can also track individual progress. Evaluation can also track individual progress through client treatment plans and updates. So if we think about that college orientation group again, we would need to consider our intended goals and outcomes. What information were the students supposed to learn? What delivery methods did we provide? A brief survey could collect information on both student knowledge and student experience, with questions aimed to address whether or not they retain specific information, and other questions aimed to address the level of satisfaction. This evaluation could provide feedback on individual members. Did Monica learn where to get her student ID? And could also tell us on a larger scale how effective the overall group was. How many students could find the health map? The evaluation can also be used to inform us where we might need to make improvements in the orientation program, and could also provide feedback on the overall enjoyment or satisfaction from members. Keeping in mind that evaluation and the question of whether or not a group has worked will vary according to the situation and perspective, let's talk a little bit about some methods. Evaluation instruments may be self-designed or standardized, but conducting a thoughtful and intentional evaluation will lead to improvement in design for future groups. Standardized scales exist as a way to offer greater statistical confidence in your findings, and they can be used to help demonstrate the effectiveness of your group. For instance, if you were running a psychoeducational group for teens at risk for alcohol use, you could have them take an alcohol awareness survey during the first session of the group, and then again at the end. Because your group was intended to raise awareness regarding the potentially damaging effects of alcohol, your sessions provided members with information and examples of these effects, and you would expect that the members would earn higher scores after participating in your group. You can also design scales or surveys that meet the needs of your particular group, but recognize that there are limits to the instruments because they've not been validated and may not be available. Despite these potential limitations, you may still decide to design your own instrument, and in doing so, it's important to keep your instrument brief, make sure that your questions are clearly worded, and that your questions are appropriate for the client age and developmental level. It's also important to avoid making assumptions of literacy in many situations, and making sure that group members will be equipped to read and respond to the surveys. A follow-up survey is one way to provide the opportunity for evaluation, and oftentimes members have different perceptions with a little distance, so you may wait a short time before sending it. Another way of evaluating a group is to have members provide feedback while the group is running. For instance, say I run a new activity in one session, and I'm interested in whether or not I might want to use it again for a future session. I could take a few minutes at the end of the group session to get feedback on what the participants learned or found to be the most and least useful. I want to try to do this at the end of the session rather than during a later session to ensure that the details are fresh and accessible for members. As a leader, I could also make observations regarding changes that I noticed. For instance, if during a group session, I introduce the concept of the group I statements in their communication rather than you in expressing their feelings, I may later observe that the communication pattern has shifted in the group and more members are using I statements. This kind of observation should be included in my leader notes. Once a group has concluded, it can be helpful to collect information on member satisfaction, progress towards specific goals, as well as group processes that occur within the group, like a sense of belonging and safety. To a certain extent, collecting information on each of these aspects throughout the life of the group can provide insights as well. We want to avoid doing so much evaluation that we interrupt group process, but it can be helpful to check in with group members once or twice, depending on your time frame, to get a sense for issues like satisfaction, progress towards goals, and group process. Your authors describe reflective evaluation as a process that comes out of leader observation and serves to monitor group mood, themes, cohesiveness, norms, power, roles, and defenses, as well as verbal and nonverbal participation and feedback. This can serve as an informal kind of evaluation, and these types of observations serve group leaders very well when leaders are able to journal, reflect, and then discuss these observations with a co-leader or supervisor. Keep in mind that co-leaders should meet following each session to discuss their experiences and reactions, and group leaders who are working individually would benefit from supervision in order to do the same. Leaders can provide feedback for each other, and video recording can be another helpful source of feedback, but take care with the suggestions. There are important ethical and legal considerations related to consent when you're thinking about doing recordings. So let's think a bit about your group project and how you'll incorporate evaluation into your proposal. How and when will group and individual outcomes be measured? To figure this out, you'll need to consider what the group and the individual goals are, how you're assigning worth and value to the experience, how you want to collect and analyze the information, and then what you'll do once you have that information. Your specific intervention may already have the answers to some of these questions, but as a group, you need to decide how you're going to play with the group and communicate your decision in your project. So imagine that you are one of your clients whom you're likely to serve in your proposed group. Write down at least 2 reasons why they're coming to your group. Feel free to pause this or just go ahead and do it as we're talking. So of those 2 reasons why a group member might be coming to the group that you've proposed for your group project, pick one of these and then phrase it now as a vague goal that client might come to your group with. So what is a potential goal that a client might come to your proposed group with? Generally, clients want to feel better, but they may have other goals in groups, communicating better with a spouse, or stopping some kind of problematic behavior. So now what your job to do is to turn this into a SMART goal, but making sure that each of the requirements are satisfied. We want to look at these as we break it down. Is your goal specific? When it comes time to do an update, will the goal be clear enough to gauge any progress for you? As you go through each of these and you look back to the goal that you've created, you'll want to think about modifying that goal so that it does in fact meet these criteria. So the first one being, is your goal specific? Is it measurable? You should know how you'll measure your progress. Maybe there's a certain time, a measurable increase or decrease in a certain behavior, but you want a way to make sure that you can measure progress towards your goal. Is your goal attainable? It's really important that members establish goals that are within their reach, as this promotes self-advocacy and can impact motivation for their clients. So you want to go back again, make sure that goal is something that's reasonable, that's attainable, that's within that client's ability. Is your goal relevant? Does it relate to the purpose of the group and the needs of the client? If your client comes in with a goal that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what your group's promoting, then they're setting themselves up to be in a bad situation because obviously your group will not be able to address that goal if it's not something that's relevant to the time that you'll be spending together. Finally, is your goal time-bound? Are you clear about when you could expect this goal to be achieved? Having that kind of specific time frame helps the goal become real and actionable because now we have an idea for when it could actually be accomplished. So again, you'll want to go through, use this slide again as you're developing the goals for your group proposal, and make sure that each of your goals hits all 5 of these basic necessities in terms of creating SMART goals. So now that you have an idea of what an example could be of a SMART goal for a fictional group member, let's talk about the treatment update, the final portion of your group project. Treatment plans and treatment updates will vary from setting to setting agency to agency. For the purposes of our work together, the treatment update that you'll provide as part of your group project will be written about a fictional group member following your 6th session together. The treatment update must include information on each of the following sections: the client's general behavior, motivation, initial goals and progress towards those, as well as any verbal or nonverbal and resistant behavior from group sessions in the plan. In each of these sections, take time to include material from your reading and lecture materials, citing specific behaviors and group dynamics as appropriate. So I offer this treatment plan update as a starting point for anyone who might be interested, although I'm happy to accept other formats as well. Just be sure to refer to the group project assignment and grading rubric to be sure that you've fulfilled all of the requirements. Here you'll see room to include your group, the date of the treatment update, as well as the date of the first group session and the number of the group sessions. Next, you'll include the presenting concern that brought the member to the group. This can be a brief overview and need not be more than 1 to 3 sentences. Next, you'll want to include the individual goal or goals that the group member designated at the beginning of the group. Make sure that these are SMART goals, and feel free to return to that earlier slide for help creating SMART goals. Indicate the intended completion date and the progress that the member has made toward that goal. Are they on track? Has there been a setback? Did they successfully achieve that goal already? Finally, document any changes to the goal or the completion date for that goal based on the progress update for your goal. The next space contains an opportunity for you as a group leader to include your observations regarding behavior, motivation, participation, and possible resistant behavior. This is where your group may need to refer back to earlier lecture and reading materials in order to incorporate enough course information regarding group dynamics and member behavior. This section of the project is an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to identify and describe client behaviors within a group. Finally, you must describe any current needs that may be present. These could be housing needs or other support issues, and may also include some strategies for meeting these needs. Strategies may be within the group leader's ability, or they may include finding an outside resource to help the client. So as we wrap up this lecture on evaluation, let's review a few important points. Evaluation is an ongoing process that benefits both group members and group leaders, and can track the progress of individual members and the group as a whole. Evaluation of the group as a whole can be conducted through formal measures like surveys or scales that members fill out during or after the completion of a group, and may measure things like satisfaction, progress towards goals, and group process. Evaluation can also be done through more informal exercises, like asking for verbal reflection from group members, or group co-leaders taking time to reflect on observations and experiences after each session to make notes on significant events or opportunities to improve the group. Evaluation provides information that can be used to improve group leadership or the overall group experience moving forward. It gives us an opportunity to measure and communicate what we're doing and how it's working, and it also gives us information on the areas that might need improvement. Evaluation can also track individual progress through client plans and updates. For your group project, you'll need to take some time to consider what outcome measures you would like to use to evaluate the effectiveness of your group, and make sure that these measures are in line with the overall type and purpose of your group. Also, your client treatment update is an opportunity to evaluate a fictional member of the group and the progress towards SMART goals that you have decided on together. Please use this as an opportunity to demonstrate your mastery of the material group dynamics and member behaviors, and refer back to previous lectures as needed. Finally, keep in mind that I'm willing to look over any drafts that I receive on or before the date outlined in your syllabus. Thanks for listening to the lecture. Have a great week.
All right, so we have your last few days here, and still welcome any live presentations if you want to come in person. and okay with you recording yourself leading the group. So that being either from Girls Circle or any mental health group you find, if it's from your internship or any of those. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out, and we will see you guys again on Thursday. But literally last few classes, last week and a half. So if you do need it incomplete, let me know. That gives you 6 more weeks into the fall to complete the work. But just reach out and let me know, and we will complete all the paperwork for that. See you Thursday.